everyone. Welcome back to the No Ratings podcast. It's that time again, the insight. Firstly, I want to apologise. I've got styes on both eyes. I've been ill for the last week and I'm not a rapper, even though that absolutely rhymes. But we're back. We've got episodes galore. We've recorded a few in the studio and Pythag is with me as usual. Arsenal have just beaten City 5-1. First off the bat, Pythag, what did you make of this game?
I mean, we said it before the podcast, it's not surprising that City are just falling off the wagon week after week. Their cycles come to an end, and there's only so much you can keep basically tearing them apart from an analytical point of view. So I want to focus more on praising Arsenal. I want to look at some players who haven't really got the praise that they've deserved. I think someone like Trossard, at one stage I was seeing tweets about him being sold. I don't know whether it was the summer or whatever. For me, it just surprised me because I think he's a really good servant to the club. I think he's someone who maximizes his potential. He's not an elite player. An elite player is someone who in the Champions League final will do a Vinicius or do whatever. He's not that level of player. But what he is he's a really useful squad player, I feel. Someone who can turn it up and turn it on in big games. Someone who scores crucial goals. But, he tore Nunes apart, which, again, you probably argue, okay, he's a guy who's playing out of position at right back. But Trossard's got it in him to give any fullback on his day a bit of trouble just because of his two-footedness. He can go down the line, he can then come back in and, link up play as well. And he's always sharp in and around the box. So for me, someone who really stood out to me today. I think an interesting tactic that I saw today was Havertz going out to the right flank and Martinelli basically playing through the middle. Not terribly sure how effective Martinelli actually was in the centre, if I'm being totally honest, but it was more of a decoy tactic which kept City's line sort of closer to their own goal because they were fearful of Martinelli's runs in behind, and it allowed Havertz to basically drive inwards and uh, eat up yards for Arsenal. I think Havertz was good apart from his finishing, which again it's a cliche, but his finishing today was laughable at times, to be honest.
I think the beauty of Havertz is also the ugly side of Havertz. Like what you just described there is what I think makes him so effective in a game like this. Akanji was occupied the whole game, even when I think he made two runs where he didn't get to the ball. Akanji had to track back with him, so he sort of like dragged Akanji around, who had an awful day, and then he forced Stones to constantly play backwards or square because his body position is really good when he's pressing. The problem you have is in a game like today, you can get away with that chance that he missed, but if this game finished 2-2, best believe Kai Havertz is people are going to be killing him on the internet. It's and that's where I think sometimes you have to go. I've started saying this a lot recently, but football's so circumstantial that today you've got away with it, but on another day you're not going to get away with it. Like you're not going to have that day today. Like I think Arsenal scored 3 goals in the exact same corner where Ortega didn't move once. So either that's something that's been practiced, which it probably was, or it's just a case of that City are completely done out, which I think we both agree they are. But I still think Havertz has his uses. I just don't think you can keep relying on him, which is
I
not
have to
true.
agree. I mean, in terms of the vibes of the game, I think Arsenal were the deserved winners. So I didn't feel like in any
Mm,
way, shape, or form it felt like a robbery of any case. But the fact that Havertz missed that chance to put them 2-0 ahead, City then actually came back to 1-1. And then they scored a deflected goal to get back into the lead again. I mean, great for Arsenal that's happened, but that almost was a result that they've absolutely thrown away there, and it could have been
mm.
really, really, damaging to their title campaign. I mean, I'm not an Arsenal fan, but just as a neutral, I was happy it went that way because I would have felt sorry for them if they haven't won that game.
I mean, to be fair, obviously I'm slightly less
Yeah,
neutral because Liverpool are in the
sure.
title race, but I don't know if you felt this way when you were watching it. When City scored, obviously Arsenal scored really quickly
Yeah,
after, but I think we both watched the game at such a pace that we can almost like analyze what's happening
yeah.
there and then. I think if Partey doesn't score, there's no chance that game finishes 5-1 because I felt like Arsenal were gonna become
Yeah.
frantic, and I felt like they were sleepwalking to a result they didn't want to get, and City were almost like gaining encouragement from it because I think we don't need to talk about why City are bad. I think it's very obvious at this point, but they still have so much talent, and that worked against Chelsea. Like where Chelsea were suddenly lost the eagerness to win the game, and City said, "We'll just take it off you." Then that could have really easily happened
That was a
today.
key
Um,
juncture of the game. Anyone that's played football, you know that, you can have all the tactics in the world, but ultimately football is about emotional, psychological states at that particular moment in time. And yeah, I think if Partey doesn't score that goal, I'm not saying Arsenal can't go on to win it, but I
Mm,
think the if you have a 15-minute period there where it becomes a bit 50-50, nerves would start to become frayed for sure, for sure. And you can just imagine what the storylines would have been after the game if they haven't won that game. It would have focused back on that Havertz chance to not put it away. So I'm kind of glad
yeah,
from everyone's perspective that is kind of gone that way, because I think after the stick Havertz got with his misses and stuff in the previous games,
yeah,
I wouldn't want him to go through that again. So I think it's positive that it's for me the right result, I feel.
yeah. I think also you were just talking about that 15-minute juncture. I think Declan Rice in his post match, and I know you want to talk about him, said that up until um, it was sorry when City scored to make it 1-1, it felt like that sort of game. Even he said that. So that goal, and I'll talk about psychology soon after we speak about Rice, but that goal definitely changed things. And I know you want to talk about Rice, but this is another game where I go like, that is £100 million midfielder. There's so much in this game that he provided. And you said before we started recording something about him like tucking into left wing back.
Yeah, it's interesting because in this particular game it seemed to work. Um I personally feel like when Declan Rice goes out to the left, because he's so one-footed, there's no real drive down that side, down the line. But in this particular game, he was basically just serving, almost like it was like having a target man, but a left wing back, where whenever
Mm,
Arsenal want to have uh, like someone calm to just receive the ball out in space, they look up, they see Declan Rice there at left wing back, play it into him, and then Lewis Skelly and Trossard would make their runs based on where Declan Rice was, and then together they'd start creating triangles. So it was a really key part of the pitch for Arsenal where, compared to the other side of the pitch, Timber and Martinelli didn't really connect that much or with any real effectiveness, whereas all this sort of link up play was happening down that left side, and Declan Rice was a key part of it. Obviously, further down the line, say in the Champions League, you know, the reason why they brought in a Marino was to give them a left footed player down that side. And long term, I think there's a slight ceiling to Declan Rice at that side of the pitch. But for this particular game, it really worked and it was impactful.
I think it all also coincided with the fact that City lost the game down that side. I feel like, and I don't want to kill him because I actually don't think Mateus. It's not even his fault. Mateus Nunes is not a right back. And when he played midfield for Wolves, he used to sort of like slalom his way past players. But this is typical of almost the opposite of the Trent effect. He doesn't want the pitch in front of him. He doesn't want loads of the ball. And what Arsenal were doing is they were encouraging him to get. They were encouraging the ball out there, and City kept falling for it. And I don't know if you felt the same. I was screaming at my screen, going, "Stop giving it to him!" Because he at no point went past his fullback, whoever was marking him. At no point was he planning to go to the byline for a cutback, which is staple of what a Guardiola team used to do. And at no point was he putting the ball in early. He was taking a touch back inside to just go back to where it came from. And I was sat there thinking, oh, I'm not a football coach, but I'm about to speak to one in an hour or so, and I need to ask him why do they keep doing that?
It's crazy. Like you got Nunes there, you got Foden there, two of the most passive flank players I think I've seen in a long time. Like none of them actually want to do anything out wide. It's weird that the goal actually came purely because Savinho had enough cuts in,
Yeah.
almost goes to the right side for them, and then they get the ball to him, and he's the one that delivers the cross and is proactive and creates that chance. I mean, it looked like a nicely worked goal, but let's be real.
Mm.
Apart from that little moment, those two on that flank were absolutely shocking for the full 90 minutes. Now, I'm sure you're going to want me to speak about Phil Foden. And someone needs to call this guy out because he's one of the most charisma free, talented players I've ever seen. And I don't mean that as a compliment. Like, literally, like, he's the complete opposite of Cole Palmer, where Cole Palmer seems to be full of aura in general games, but okay, in big games he's gone missing as well. In fairness, but Foden just seems to like he's like a system player who's like just a system player, if that makes sense. Because even in systems, you need a bit of a personality. So even guys like Iniesta, Messi, they would have moments where they have to almost take themselves out of the system to produce some impact on the game. So Iniesta's would be like the goal in the World Cup. It'd be that moment against Chelsea. Messi, obviously, week in, week out, he's producing goals and assists. But even within the structure, you need to break free and do something. I feel like Foden sometimes, he's just so closeted in the way that he plays. It's like he doesn't want to break free. It's crazy. Backwards, sideways, pass, backward. Even his free kicks feel like there's no personality to them. I just don't get it. It's like a zombie watching him at times. It's really frustrating.
I mean, I tweeted at halftime saying City have been poor, but Savio looks sharp, like bright. You know, one of these
Yeah.
players that you give him the ball and you go, he might do something, which is exactly what happened with the goal. Marmoush was poor today, but he still was picking the ball up and going, playing with some intention. Won a free kick here and there. Foden was getting the ball with his back turned to goal and just popping it back to Kovacic and Bernardo. And me personally, I've never played professionally, but I've played pretty close. But even just at a lower level, if I'm firing the ball into my magician, and the magician can see that this midfield currently is incompetent, not because of themselves, but because this team has just become this. And I felt this I really felt for Kovacic at times. I felt like he was giving it to Foden and going, I don't want it back. Like, I'm not having my best day. We don't have many options off the ball. Haaland's not doing anything. And there's no De Bruyne who's going to come and get it off me. And you keep coming 2 yards close to me to take it off me. And when you get it off me, you give it straight back to me. At this point, I was just going, like, if Pep subs you now for a McAtee, it's the biggest diss going because it's a massive game. That's exactly what happened. And somehow, um, end of the game, no one's talking about it. Somehow, there's still this. I mean, when the mistake happened for the goal, commentator pundits were going, I think the referee's in his eye line. They even cut to a camera angle to show his eye line, and I was going, this
I,
last week when a brand new Azerbaijani, yeah, he's Azerbaijani, isn't he? Kusanov makes that one
I thought it
mistake.
was Uzbeki. Is
We
he not Uzbeki? Yeah.
Uzbekistan, sorry, he makes that one mistake, and they talk about it for 3 hours after the game. He's brand new to the league. He's never been here before. I'm just
I've just
baffled.
never seen the amount of protection, man. Like this guy's got next level media protection. I just don't understand what it is. I mean, I like Foden. Like I want him to do well, but obviously, if you have a bad game or you're not elevating your team, you're not showing the balls to actually get on the ball and do stuff with the ball, you're going to get called out, and you deserve to be called out. As simple as
Mm,
that. He's too good a player technically to be playing like he is. Like it's the worst thing you can have as a footballer is a lack of courage, and he's playing with a lack of courage at the moment.
yeah. I think also one other thing on Foden and Marmoush were switching for who's playing in the 10. I was disappointed in both
Yeah,
in terms of work rate because I think if you're looking at your two holding midfielders, Bernardo and Kovacic, you can actively see them getting overrun. Even if the manager's not said to you, you need to drop in sometimes. You need to be intelligent enough to drop in sometimes. Pick up the deepest midfielder. There's so many times where Arsenal would have an extra man in midfield, which we've spoken about so many times. Back to Arsenal very quickly. What else do you think Arteta did well today to get through this one? Because I'm going to talk about the psychology in a second.
obviously, like Miles Lewis Skelly was impressive. I think he defended really well on the far post. He had little moments with Haaland at the far post, which he handled with aplomb. And then he just strode forward with the ball again, linked up well with the midfield. And then the goal he scored was fantastic. Really capped off a really impressive display for the youngster. So that was a good selection to make. Um, that was generally it. I think Odegaard, obviously, I think he played well in the first period of the game, but when you're up against City's midfield like that, it is really easy for an elite level offensive midfielder to get in behind them and make runs. So yeah, I think. Oh,
Mm.
Raya is just someone I want to give a shout out to. Top performance as well. I thought.
Yeah, made two unbelievable saves. Definitely the Gvardiol
Yeah,
one because I think, and this is what I'm going to talk about very quickly: is psychology. And people might hate me for this, but I do still think Arsenal are fragile psychologically. Like I think when that goal went in, Foden makes a mistake. We've spoken about that, and it really is a sliding doors moment. But up until that goal, I was getting, and bear in mind, I'm a Liverpool fan. I want to see this game finish a draw. I was watching Arsenal and going, "Why are you doing this to yourself? You're dropping deeper and deeper. You're asking for them to come and get you. You're hoping you can nick it and score the Havertz goal, which you did eventually. I'll have that Martinelli chance. But at 3-1, that's absolutely fine. At 1-0, you were sleepwalking to losing because you have a fear that you couldn't win it by playing until Party scores a deflected goal. And then they're going, hold on a minute. Like, this is not Man City. We're practically playing a side in the bottom half of the table whose midfield can't run. Let's go and take it from them. And this is the first time, and I criticised Arteta last season, I think, for going up against City when their back four was, I think they had a Kanji at left back, Rico Lewis at right back, and I said, go and kill them off, and they didn't. This is, I think they accidentally ended up killing them off today, but they still killed them off, and I think that's a huge step to take psychologically, and I think it could massively benefit them in the running. Fascinating to see what happens next. Just while we're at this juncture, because I think today is an important juncture, do you think this game will have the sort of impact that I'm potentially alluding to it having, that Arsenal could now go on a run?
I think Arsenal are a very good team. I think they're a team that I know we've criticized them for their lack of signings in certain areas, and I do think ultimately it could come back to hurt them. But I think this is a really potentially good result, which would push their confidence levels up. And I wouldn't be surprised if they go on a run. I mean, they're a good enough team to go on a run. Um, but I do think we'll potentially see future dips as well.
All right, interesting. I have my thoughts, but I'll save it for a Liverpool video. I have my thoughts on Arsenal during this one. But if you've enjoyed this, then make sure you drop a like if you're watching on YouTube or wherever you're watching it. I think there will be more insights coming your way because we've got the Cup games coming up. We've got Champions League now around the corner. I think the knockout games will be worth talking about. I think some of the end of Champions League ties were just a bit drab, and everything that we expect to happen did happen. So if you enjoy this, then make sure you give us a follow, and we'll see you on the next one.